Greetings, friends. My name is Charles Eubanks, and I'd like to welcome you to the Anime Corner, the place where I talk about my interests in anime and manga. And what more befitting way to begin this blog series than with the one that started it all for me, and also my favorite anime, Attack on Titan, also known as Shingeki no Kyojin. And there's the title card. This fantasy action drama shonen show came out in April of 2013 and made quite a sensation in America, and has quickly risen to among the top most popular anime in America due to a golden mixture of excellent marketing, high-speed action, and intense drama. It is one among few anime that have been able to break the cultural barriers that have divided Japan and America for a long time in terms of anime, and become beloved by both nations alike. You can see people walking down the street these days in Survey Corps jackets and Titan-themed t-shirts or backpacks with merchandise filling stores such as Barnes & Noble and Hot Topic. I go more to Barnes & Noble than Hot Topic. I haven't been there in a long time. Anyway, the reason I want to talk about this show in particular, other than it's perfect as my first anime blog and is also my favorite, is that the second season of Attack on Titan is currently airing, and I have been watching it with rapt attention and bated breath. So before diving headfirst into season 2, I decided to start watching season 1 again, as I rarely do with anime, since there is so much new material to watch in the anime medium that I can hardly ever justify spending my time rewatching something I've already seen, rather than watch something new that I haven't seen. So, at this time, I have finished rewatching season 1. It took around 6-7 days at most, watching 3 or 4 episodes. That's basically the same thing I did when I watched it the first time. It's just such an intense show, you just want to watch it all in one sitting. That's how it's paced. But so yeah, I've rewatched it, and I started into season 2 already. I've watched 5 episodes now, and want to talk about them before too many more episodes come out. We're almost at the halfway point in season 2 now, what with the new season being only 12 episodes, whereas the first had 25, which is a rather disappointing little detail. There are also some things about the second season which make it a bit more controversial as a follow-up to the first season, such as the fact that it did not come out for
3 stinking
years. That is a long time.
3 stinking
Days would have been tortuous enough for the avid fans of Attack on Titan, but no, it took about 3.5 years for it to come out again, with a new episode. So with such a long wait, you better bet that the people that have been waiting deserve some bloody good content after all that suffering. So people may be a bit more critical with these new episodes, and very well they ought to be. I certainly will be, and have been. So, without further ado, let me get into it. Now, I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't seen either season, so I shall get out my general idea for this first. Just as a blanket statement about my thoughts on both seasons, I loved the first season, and just everything about it almost. There's very little that I could say negative about the first season. And the things that I can say negative about the first season, I think are very subjective. I personally didn't have those problems with season 1 that a lot of other people did. So it, chalk that up to me being different than everyone else, as everyone else is unique. And as for season 2, I do not yet like it quite so much as the first. I'm hesitant to say too much positive about the second season, since the material of the story is dealt with in such a different manner than in the first season, which I loved. So, yeah. I have not read the manga, know that. Therefore, I cannot say anything in terms of whether the anime is actually going more according to the mangas or is taking a new heading. I can't make any of those comments or commentary on the manga in comparison with the anime. Um, so, any further ahead, I am not than where the anime is now. I'm just going based on the anime. I have some anime. I mean, I have anime, of course, but I have some manga in my collection. But I am not a real manga collector. I haven't bought a whole lot of Attack on Titan manga, even though it is my favorite show at the moment. Um, Having said all that, I cannot guarantee that you won't be spoiled for the show beyond this point, and anything spoilerific will be said more towards the end of the blog. As I go on, I will probably be spouting a few more spoilers than at the beginning. So, let me say, first of all, that I'm going to be spoiling things. So, for those who haven't seen it, what are you doing? Watch the show. It's a wonderful show. The first season is wonderful. I recommend it to just about anyone who enjoys action and fantasy and world building and some creepy horror elements. Go watch it. It's not a bad show. It doesn't have any fan service in the classical sense. No sexual innuendo of any kind or anything visually assaulting to the eyeballs, other than blood gore. So be wary of that, all of my Christian viewers, like 18 of you, and I'm sure not all of you are Christian at this point. But yes, be forewarned, this is an R-rated anime, in fact, because of violence and profanity. So, there you have it. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. So first of all, let me say that I love Attack on Titan as an intellectual property very dearly. It's just my favorite thing. I used to think that Trigun was my absolute favorite, and it still sits as a rival with Attack on Titan for my affections. But when it comes down to it, my favorite anime between the two is basically determined by which one I've watched more recently. When I watch Trigun, I say, "Oh, this is it. This is definitely my favorite, and nothing can compete with it." But then I rewatch Attack on Titan, and Trigun can't compete with it. So yeah, now that I rewatched season one, I realized just how good it actually still is. Mainly because of the amount of complex emotions that the show made me feel when I first watched it, and how it still makes me feel when I rewatch it. Not only that, but the production values are through the roof, and the animation is so consistently good and hyper-realistic when compared to most other anime that I can't help but wonder at its brilliance in terms of animation. Now, like I said, it was the first anime that I watched, which definitely does have an effect upon how a person perceives a show. But it was my first anime I'd seen which was aimed at more of an adult audience. I was used to things like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Fighting Foodons. I was familiar with those shows. I used to think that all anime were either childish or perverted. And this show, when my friend showed it to me in early 2014, some months after it had, almost a year after it had finished airing, season one finished airing, I was blown away by the fact that that anime could be geared towards adults. I was blown away by the fact that it held such mature themes as survival, self-confidence, or lack thereof, death, murder, hope and despair, and what your life is made out of, whether or not you have this fighting spirit, those sorts of things. And that, for people who have seen a lot of anime, that's nothing new. But for me, it was new. And the way that Attack on Titan deals with those themes is very different than any other anime show that I've seen before or since. So yeah, and I'm aware that the first anime that a person sees is very likely to be their favorite for a long while, and it was so with me. and it may even remain so based on the feelings of nostalgia they feel towards the show afterward, and the fond memories of watching it they had from back then. Uh, it is also common, however, to lose those feelings of absolute adoration when the show is rewatched with a more realistic mindset, especially in comparison with other anime that that person may have seen. I expected that to be the case when I started rewatching Attack on Titan this year, season 1, but to my surprise and delight, as I've already said, I found myself feeling those exact same feelings of ecstasy and excitement which I experienced when I first watched it. It was just as good, um, which surprised me. It had not lost any of its savor with the rewatching, which is really quite rare for me. I have restarted watching a bunch of my favorite shows before and found them to be not quite as good as I remembered them. Not so with AOT, Attack on Titan. Therefore, based on the evidence, Attack on Titan remains in its place at the throne of my anime tastes, ruling over all other anime I have yet seen. Now, I fully understand that this is a very subjective point of view. It won't be everybody's favorite, and it isn't, but a whole lot of people like it. It is extremely popular, and I myself am very surprised at myself for so thoroughly enjoying something that is part now of the pop culture of America and our world generally. I consider myself to be something of a counterculturist, usually. Um, Counterculturalist? Being described by my friends to me as kind of a neo Victorian, and I appreciate that label because so many of my tastes remain anchored in things of the past. This thing right here, this black box behind me, is a vintage vinyl player. I love vinyls. I love old movies. I love old books and music. Um, and not just old as in like 30 years ago or from the 70s, like this vinyl player. I love things like 1800s old. Even in anime, a lot of my favorites are considered old by today's standards. I would like a lot more shows to be set in the 1800s, or thereabouts. Attack on Titan seems very much geared toward people like me who love history, who love medieval Europe or Renaissance things, or even steampunk, like the machines, the ODM gear, the omnidirectional maneuver gear that the Survey Corps employs to fly around like Spider-Man in Attack on Titan are gas powered, and seem to take a lot of cues from like diesel punk or steampunk inspirations, which I am very much a fan of. So yeah, it's really odd to be into something that so many other people in the modern day culture are into. I'm used to being into things like classical literature and talking about that, and everybody kind of glazing over when I start talking about how good the writing is in things like Moby Dick or what else is there that I have, you know, Count of Monte Cristo or what have you. Uh, I really also, in terms of anime, getting back to the point, I really love finding old obscure anime that shows that have waned in popularity, and discovering new gems of old entertainment that have been lost to history. I love that sort of thing. And it doesn't happen often, but when it happens, it's like, yes, this is my favorite. I love finding anime that were drawn before the days of CGI. Yeah, I'm in love with a show whose merchandise can be found in Hot Topic. That's pretty odd for me. The reasoning behind this, I believe, is that this show takes the tried and true tropes of American TV shows, which, you know, why it's so popular is because it takes all these different tropes from, of course, anime, but I think, like Western TV shows like Lost or The Walking Dead and pull them off in a different way that improves on the formulas found in those American shows, like using character deaths as as like extreme drama, like showing that a show has no plot armor and that the plot devices are all centered around characters and their development or character deaths. Action and cliffhangers, everything ending on a cliffhanger. Attack on Titan does all of that, and you could say that it's cliche, but my argument is that it did it better than those shows. Um, the narrative always flows in one distinctive route, and stays with the characters, whereas in Lost and The Walking Dead, sometimes it just resets things, goes back in time, goes forward in time, and you're like, what's going on? Um, and that doesn't happen, at least in an off-putting way, in Attack on Titan. There was never a single point in Attack on Titan season one, because I'm talking about season one here. I'm talking about season one so that I can get to what I think about season two. Um, but yeah, the pacing, the fastness, the speed, I should say, of the pacing never waned, never became stale to me. Every episode is crammed with action, so much character development, so many important events, so much information that you feel like you watched like 9 episodes of your average show after only a 25-minute episode of Attack on Titan. I remembered the events of episode 2, in which Mikasa and the backstory of her and Eren Yeager's relationship, their friendship, and their mutual protection of each other after being attacked by slave traders and then murdering them. I imagined those episodes to have happened in like episode 4 or 5, but they happened in episode 2. And I believe that has to do with the fact that they're so jam packed with content. It just goes so fast, and it's all content that's extremely interesting. Um, yeah, I remember those episodes as being episode 4 just because the amount of events which transpired in episode 1 and 2 seemed like too much to have happened in 1 or 2 episodes. And the pacing only gets faster as the show goes on and ends, and at the end it ends with a powerful and protracted battle between titans, which leaves the town in ruins and leaves the audience breathless. Now, the pacing means nothing if it's not focused, like a lot of shows do. If the pacing is very fast, um, but is focused on a whole lot of different characters and different places and skips back and forth a lot of people tend to glaze over, and so do I. I kind of lose track of things if they're not focusing on one uh, clear set of characters. That's what Attack on Titan does. It focuses on something which you as the audience care about, which in this case is a very small cast of very important, very strong characters. And that's where the excellence lies, on the struggles that they face. There's always a lot of stuff happening, a lot of time passing, lots of events, lots of mysteries to be explored, but they all, without exception, have to do with the 3 main characters of the show: Armin Arlert, Mikasa Ackerman, and the MC, of course, Eren Yeager. And there are lots of other characters, like Levi here. I don't know if you can see him. I just got him in a loot crate, and want to show you off, show him off to you. You see him. I'm very proud of him. It's one of the first Attack on Titan things that I have gotten ever, and so I'm proud to have something to represent my love for the show. But yes, those he comes in later, and he is a very important character. But even though he exists and is extremely interesting as a character, he is not focused on as much as any of the others, Armin, Mikasa, or Yeager. Eren, I should say, since I'm saying their first names. But the plot never strays or deviates from their immediate presence, and if it ever does, it does so in order to give context to their place in the story. You see who they are and how they've developed from the days of their childhood up through the days they join the military, through the days they become part of the elite corps of the military, and their characters shift and change pretty greatly in all that time. Armin starts off as an unmotivated weakling, but with the help of his friends and the necessity of the moment, he must become a confident strategist, highly intelligent strategist for the human military effort. Eren Yeager goes from brash and arrogant little boy to a broken and raging murderer to a fearful and cowardly victim, back to brash and arrogant, which is rather realistic. But he finally begins to harden as a strong-willed and well-rounded fighter. All this based on how much power he's able to wield in any one time. Mikasa is probably the one who has changed the least in this story, and she's also one of the most loved characters in the story by the fans, which is kind of odd, but you know, she's a pretty girl with a red scarf, and that's all you need to know, basically. And she, but her transition, there is a bit of development with her. Her transition from a helpless little girl to a cold-blooded killer for the sake of her beloved Eren is quite fascinating, and I'm still intrigued to see exactly what type of person she will turn out to be. All of this adds to the intensity of a show in which all the secondary characters are all constantly in danger of being killed off, and are killed off mercilessly, despite having usually very attractive and well detailed and fleshed out character designs. Like, usually in anime, you can tell who is or who isn't going to die by how well designed their characters are. If there's a very generic looking guy who's usually very cowardly and flipping out all the time, he's probably gonna die. He'll probably die. But if a girl is really attractive and has a strong character, they'll usually never die. I've never seen like a really attractive girl character get killed off in an anime, unless it was like a Kame ga Kill. You can read my blog about that. I might make a vlog about that show soon, but that's the only show that I've really seen that happen. And they were really going into for the character deaths in that show. That's basically what the whole show is based on, Akame ga Kill. But in Attack on Titan, the main characters, you think they have plot armor, but you're always questioning that. You never know whether or not any of these three will die. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Mikasa or Armin died. That would be pretty intense if they did by now, knowing what I know. But at the beginning, I thought that Armin, being weak and cowardly and having kind of that childish, kind of feminine look to him, I thought he'd be like the first to die. But basically almost everyone else in the secondary cast died before him, and he's not even dead. He's not dead yet. He hasn't died. He's still there. Season 2, still alive. And there are so many other people who I thought would die, and didn't, and who I thought wouldn't die, and have. More so than any other show I've seen. But the core 3 still marches on. So, yeah. Once again, this sense of doubt as to whether or not anyone will survive serves to increase the tension and excitement of the show in every engagement that the military has with the Titans. You begin to fear the Titans themselves, not because they look terrifying. Sometimes they look incredibly foolish, but you begin to fear them for what they could do to your precious favorite little characters. And this all translates into a show that is always exciting. And I'll be the first to admit, that there are always some long sequences of dialogue throughout this show. There's lots of dialogue here. But these scenes were directed in such a way as to maintain a sense of tension and excitement throughout them too. A lot of people don't like dialogue scenes in general, I have actually met these people. They say that dialogue and exposition is basically worthless. Like, show don't tell is the moniker, is the thing that everyone says these days in order to try and describe what they think is really good, television, good showing, show don't tell. I've met these people. They don't want anyone to speak. And I can understand being bored by a long dialogue scene. But there are long dialogue scenes in most of my favorite movies and shows, and I think they're all actually very interesting. Sherlock Holmes is like my favorite mystery series, and that's nothing but dialogue. The only action is someone might shoot a pistol at someone, or someone might punch someone else, but it's all dialogue. Um, Now, I will say this: the only reason dialogue might ever be boring is if the writing and direction of it are bad. If what is being discussed is exciting, then the dialogue should be exciting to everyone, almost everyone. If the scene is directed poorly, though, or the acting is done badly, then yes, a dialogue scene can be grinding and unenjoyable. But but that's not because it's just a dialogue scene. No one should have really a problem with dialogue scenes in and of themselves. It's just how they're done. In Attack on Titan, the dialogue can be just as exciting as the action, because there's just as much effort put into animating them as was put into the fight scenes. The camera shoots from one person to another, crazy action lines are drawn around the characters, and they all scream out their lines with great vigor and intensity. The voice acting is wonderful in this show. Um, yeah, this leads me into uh, an idea that many believe to be a negative aspect of a show, which is its melodramatic nature. There is nothing subtle about this story or about the way that the characters interact in this show. Um, One example of this is a scene early on in the first episode of season 1 in which the Survey Corps, which goes beyond the walls to protect humanity from the Titans and survey the lands, returns to the city in parade, sullen, and defeated. And an elderly woman comes out of the crowd, addressing the commanding officer of the Corps, and she asks him where her son is, and she wants to meet him. They finally returned, and she wants to see him again, see if he's okay. The officer, in response, silently hands her a wrapped up bundle, and she unwraps it, and it turns out to be the severed arm of this woman's son. This was showing, like, setting the tone for the rest of the show. It's very serious. She, of course, freaks out, weeping in the street, and clutches the officer, asking him if her son did the Corps proud, if his including, his anything he did actually worked towards the success of mankind and the survival of mankind and the victory of the Survey Corps, and whether or not his efforts helped humanity in any way. And the officer starts to say, try to appease her and say that, of course he did. But then he thinks better of it, of lying to her, and begins screaming out that, no, his sacrifice was meaningless. They lost half their force and didn't learn anything new about the Titans, and they're utterly defeated, and it's hopeless. Now, I think that this sort of dramatic yelling and screaming, this emotion, can be justified partially by the events and circumstances of the show, that of humanity being devoured by inhuman creatures larger than the average two-story building, and being hemmed in on every side by walls that they can't ever go outside of, but risk being attacked by the Titans. But in real life, an officer of the armed forces, a disciplined man, I don't know, I don't care where he or she is from or what military they're in, you would never react in this emotional and unprofessional way, especially right in front of the mother of a soldier who was killed in action. Like, they teach you how to do this. Um, so, yeah, that's something unrealistic, and it's very melodramatic. And that's something that the show keeps doing. The show keeps up this level of emotion all throughout it, and it could be seen as unrealistic and corny, and I'd have to agree to a certain degree. Anime is somewhat melodramatic in general when compared to American TV and movies, being known for its protagonists, flexing their muscles and yelling a mantra at the top of their lungs in order to build up their profound spirit power. Um, I'm thinking about you, Dragon Ball Z. Um, and while Attack on Titan does have this element, it is a shonen show. That's part of its designation, at least on my anime list. Um, it also takes this element to a whole new level, and makes it more gritty and realistic, with even heightened emotion way over the top, putting that same bravado that's in a lot of shonen shows into a more serious story and adult story that puts humankind on the brink of desperation and extinction and destruction. Something, I think, something interesting that exemplifies this principle of being gritty yet melodramatic at the same time is the manner in which blood is depicted and animated throughout this show. Whenever violence is committed, there is always undeniably a spurt of very dark, uh, very red, of course, but very dark, almost black blood, which shoots off of the body of the one struck like sparks might off of a firework. Now I'm going in for a spoiler here for season one, um, so I would recommend you watch it before. Why haven't you watched it already? Anyway, so as I was saying, even if the wound or impact of a blow is not lethal, there is always a rather copious amount of blood shooting in all directions from the wound, whether it's a deep cut in the neck of a titan or the iconic bite which Eren takes out of his own thumb in order to turn himself into a titan. And I have a gif here a gif, who cares, that I kind of wanted to show you. Uh, yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. If the blow to a human is lethal, this anime has the grace and mercy to never graphically show the character being killed. It instead opts for a rather cliched yet kind of shocking cut to the side of a wall, where the action can only be seen in the shadows, like the shadows of the combatants struggling, and you might be able to see how the person is killed, and the blood of the victim splatters onto the brick wall, almost like an 80s slasher flick might do. And that's where the show gets its R rating on my anime list, which I rather appreciate the rating system on my anime list, converting the ratings from just Japanese whatever to American movie standard. So you can say this has an R rating, 17 plus for violence. That's very helpful, and that's what this is. People are bitten in two, crushed, squashed, decapitated, mutilated, in more ways than I thought possible. Uh, it definitely depicts the idea of giants killing humans in more and more creative ways as it goes on, that's for sure. But, like I said, at the point in which actual gore might be seen, the show mercifully cuts away and spares you most of the gory details. Um, but while I say that this show has some of the most consistently realistic background and character animation I've ever seen, the depiction of the blood is probably the least realistic thing about the show, other than the obviously unrealistic existence of insane transforming titans wandering about. Yeah, another example would be Eren's mother being killed. Spoilers. First episode, though. And when the Titan goes down to bite on her lifeless body, blood shoots into the air in all directions in the form of large round droplets, and the show goes into slow motion, showing how the blood falls from the sky like rain droplets. Now, I know that humans have a lot of blood in their bodies. I know that there's blood pressure, and that exists. But for enough blood to shoot off of a body like that and produce gobs of rain, you would have to have such high blood pressure that you probably should be dead of heart disease anyway. Blood doesn't just squirt, it explodes out of people. And this tells you a lot about the philosophy of the animators. It really does. The way that blood is shown tells you a lot about a story. The way that the scenes are cut, the way the blood is animated, the way the titans are drawn, the way they move, the way the characters react, all of this works together and is optimized for shock value to create, and it all creates a constantly like oppressive and tense, exciting, and disturbing atmosphere, which never lets up or goes away. Some may find this to be overly melodramatic. Others might find this to be emotionally manipulative. Still others may be put off by the fact that the value of the show is found in a lot of its shock value, the shock factor. But no one can say that this mix is not totally engrossing. At least I don't think anyone can. I mean, people probably do. But not just for those reasons. This show is engrossing not just because of the shock value, but because of the constantly growing mystery, in the epic scale of the show. Um, the nature of the world itself is a mystery. The nature of the Titans and the walls and Aaron's Yeager's father, and there are so many mysteries that it's actually overwhelming. That's a good way to say it. Every episode brings up almost a new mystery. The scale of the story is so epic in every sense of the word. Um, a theoretician like me, a mystery lover like myself, will always find like something of mystery to dig into and hypothesize about in this show. And 4 years after AOT's season one's release, I am still having a blast doing it. Hypothesizing about, who's a Titan, who isn't a Titan, what are the Titans, all of that. I've also heard the mystery criticized too, um, by lots of different people. Not a whole lot, but just a few of people, uh, decrying it for the mystery elements being too simple and overhyped. And honestly, I have no clue where these people are coming from with this. I kind of pride myself in trying to be able to relate to and empathize with almost anyone, but this is one of those exceptions which makes me have to use the word almost when I say I can empathize with almost everyone. Um, unless those people know something which I don't know, there is no ground. There are no grounds for this fallacious assertion. Um, Now, I have heard from some of these people that they were spoiled by the plot, and they say that they were turned off by the fact that the mystery is, and I quote, that almost everyone turns out to be a Titan. Everyone's a Titan, end quote. And whether that actually literally turns out to be the case or not, I would still say that the mystery in the show is top notch. There's the value in a mystery is not just what the answer turns out to be and whether that's interesting or not. I would say that the mystery is based more on the fact of how it's dealt with. Not based on who or who isn't a Titan in the show, but on the fact that the mystery is worked into the fabric of the world building itself. The story itself is a mystery. We have no idea what time period this is taking place in. We don't know if this is taking place like in the past, in like actual medieval or Renaissance Europe, or in some future dystopia in which mankind has been taken back to the Renaissance by a cataclysm, and whether or not this is like a post-apocalyptic world. We don't know how the Titans are born, grown, or made. We don't know why mankind hasn't been taken out yet, because, I mean, have you seen that colossal Titan? It's massive. Like, look at that. There's Aaron, there's the normal human being, and then there's the Titan, And that thing could take out all of the humans in the walls by itself. No problem. And it just allows the little titans to go do its job for it. We don't know why some of these titans are like dumb and stupid, uh, and yet others are like more intelligent. Um, Nor why their bodies are so incredibly varied in size and shape. We know none of these things. Not only do all these mysteries still exist by the end of the first season, but they're all handled in such an intriguing way as to make sure that the highest amount of satisfaction is gotten out of every little bit of information that you get about the world, whether it be during the show itself or in the title cards that the show shows you before and after commercial breaks. It gives you little bits and pieces of information for you to chew on as you're waiting, which is awesome. I haven't seen a show do it like that, um, and I have the highest praise for that. Um, so it's not only the answer to the mystery that's interesting; it's the way that the author chooses to reveal it and chooses to treat a mystery, which determines whether it's interesting or not. Um, and this the way that mysteries are treated are mainly where the first and second season diverge. Now, I've heard that there were some changes made in the direction department of Shingeki no Kyojin, and what that means and how it affected the direction team remains completely unknown to me, but its effects on the show itself are definitely apparent. And this is where I start talking about season 2. So, if you want to see the rest, if you want to hear me rant about the second season and its 5 episodes, just wait a little bit and I will get on to that. So, this is the first part of a two-parter. So, thanks for listening for so long. That was a rather long-winded rant. Thanks for watching. God bless. See you in the next one.